Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BikeSocial. I'm Michael Mann, and look at this. Suzuki has made a BikeSocial bike. Look, it's the right colour blue, and it's even got BS written on it. 8. GSX-8S. Well, there it is. Brand new from Suzuki, brand new engine. And in this video, we're going to hear all about it. So we're going to hear all about where it sits in the market, why it is what it is, from Paul de Lusignan, who's the head of Suzuki Motorcycles GB. And then we're going to get all of the tech detail from Steve Hacklett, who's a product planning manager. Stay with us. Here we go. All right, I'm joined by Paul. Well, thank you so much for inviting us down to see this.
Yeah, you're welcome, Michael. It's great. Thanks for being here.
No problem. Good. So we've clearly established it's not a BikeSocial bike. It is, in fact, the brand new 2023 Suzuki GSX-8S. And it fits in with the range, doesn't the existing GSX range? So, but first of all, let me just talk a little bit more about sort of the history of your middleweights, particularly with the SV650. It's a cornerstone. It was a a big significant mark in motorcycling, and not just in your range, but in motorcycling as a whole back in '99, and it kind of revolutionised that middleweight bracket. I think it was, if you were commuting in the winter or track days in the summer and everything else in between, it was sort of the bike to have. Yeah. Is this an obvious evolution? I know you're going to keep the SV650, but as in that middleweight section, but what would you call this, and how does it kind of progress?
Well, I think, yes, you're right. We're keeping the SV650. We love it. It's a fantastic bike and something that, we've all grown up with over the years, and it's still a brilliant bike. So we're happy to have that continuing in the range. But we were looking for something as kind of the next step up for riders, really. And in our range, there's a lot in the marketplace that's around sort of 900, 950,000 cc. But there wasn't anything, this kind of capacity. So that's really what we were looking for.
776, right? That's
it. Yeah.
Parallel twin.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and this is a brand new engine. That's the sort of the highlight here, isn't the key point. Will it just be used in this naked version? No,
we've got a brand new chassis and a brand new engine, and we're launching 2 new bikes at the moment. So this 8S and also our V-Strom DE model. So we've got 2 bikes that have developed in parallel, using the same engine and chassis, but with differences for the different types of riders. So it's fantastic to have 2 new bikes from that one platform.
So just looking back to that kind of the years of SV650 middleweight dominance in a way, we have seen rumours and we've heard of a lot of talk of its natural development. I think even we've been printing stories like that or publishing stories like that about it, being turbocharged and this, that and the other, and looking at different ways of aspirating the engines. But why is it that a 776 parallel twin was, you thought, the sort of the next obvious step?
Well, I think there's a lot in the market around that 650, 700 cc, and we felt that actually the riders who want to progress from there, they've had quite a bit of experience riding, they want to progress, but they don't necessarily want to go to 900 or 1000 cc. And we felt there was a gap in the market there. So that was the first thing, is we were looking at where can we be in the market where we can kind of dominate. So I think that's really useful from that point of view. And I think the other thing is that when we're looking at the engine configuration, having this kind of parallel twin and the way we've developed it makes the engine shorter from front to back. That allows you to have different kind of wheelbase, different handling, different rider ergonomics. And we were looking for that difference. So when we wanted to bring something all new, that was the way we wanted to go with that.
So that's a highlight then. That's sort of a key point for you, is the rideability of the bike,
yes,
based on its engine.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Because standing here, you can't quite see that it's actually very, very narrow, but the overall dimensions of the bike, I sat on it earlier and it does feel like a litre bike, doesn't it?
Yes, it is like a litre bike in terms of its overall stature and its appearance, but as you say, the standover height's actually very reasonable. So it's going to be good for all sorts of riders, but you do have that big bike feel about it, and I think you have the big bike quality about it too.
Tell me a bit more about the engine and about how you see this up against, because it's probably easy for me to talk about your competitors here with the Hornet and probably the Trident and MT-07.
Yeah.
Where do you put it against that? Do you feel as though it's in terms of build quality or price or power, or where does it excel?
Well, I think the thing there is that those bikes are more firmly in that kind of 700cc area, and as I say, we are more than that. Right. And I think that kind of what we're offering here, I think with the bike, is more of everything. And you know, that is going to mean that it will still appeal to new riders, and you can have this as an A2 licensed bike if that's where you are on your journey, or you can have it as full power. But also, you know, the rider who may have been in that 700, 650cc category for a few years and is now looking for progression of their next bike, this is going to be a great next bike for those people, because the quality of all the things that it brings means the rider experience is going to be a real step up. And I think that's really where where we think we've got something that's going to be quite special.
Have you ridden it yet?
I haven't had the chance to ride it yet so far. Some of my colleagues have ridden it. I think you're going to be talking to Steve in a while. He's ridden it, so you'll be able to ask him directly.
Cool. Paul, you mentioned earlier on, not only is it a new engine, it's a new chassis as well. Do you want to just talk a little bit more
Yeah,
about
we've
that?
got a tubular steel chassis on both of the bikes, and we've chosen that because it allows us to make the frame very compact. It's much more compact than if you had an aluminium tube chassis, and that's important in itself. And also great features in terms of the handling of the bike. So, for instance, on the 8S, that slight flexibility that you get in a steel chassis is really useful at low speeds and in that kind of tight handling. Whereas on the DE, it's very useful when you're kind of doing that off-road stuff. So it's a very deliberate choice. We've chosen a chassis for that. You see that we've got separate subframe for the bike. The subframes on the two different bikes are different to suit the different style of riding and the different levels of equipment. So we've really thought about how we can use this kind of the common parts, but also really thinking about how we specialise the parts then to suit the rider and the bike.
It's a good looking thing, isn't it? I mean, it's aggressive from the front end. We've talked about how narrow it is on the standover. It's got a wider rear tyre than I think some of its competitors. So it feels like it's going to be quite, not an aggressive, but a sportier, yet still comfortable and manageable thing on the roads.
I think probably fun. I think that's the key thing, is that riders are going to enjoy riding this bike.
Good stuff. Paul, we talked about, or you mentioned the fact that this engine is also going to be used in the V-Strom, which is very exciting. Great new model as well for the Suzuki range. But in terms of it as a brand new engine for the coming years, can you give anything else away about where else it might be seen and used?
Well, I can't give any secrets away, as you might understand. You know, I want to be standing here in the future, perhaps talking about other models that might come. But clearly we've got a fantastic new frame and new engine. We've invested a lot of money into that, so I hope that we will in the future be able to talk about that. And of course, we'll be looking at what customers say, what the feedback is we get from these models, and where they'd like us to go next. We always want to hear from the customers.
Cool, yeah.
So yeah, hopefully.
Makes sense. Price and availability are obvious questions. How much is it going to be, and when's it going to be in dealers?
So I'm going to keep you guessing on the price, I'm afraid, but in the dealers in the spring.
Okay. Price-wise, competitive with others, and if you can't say anything, when are we likely to know?
I think we'll be back to you about when you're going to know. So we're still trying to tie that down.
Right.
But a key thing really is we think about where this is in the market in terms of where our positioning is. So you know, we've got an SV650 and we've got a GSX-950. We're somewhere in between.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Brilliant, Paul. Thank you so much for your time.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you.
Well, there we are. We've heard about the sort of top level stuff from Paul, and now joining me, Steve Hacklett. Steve, thanks very much for having us down here.
You're very welcome.
Now, Steve's going to tell us all about the sort of the nitty gritty, the real detail. You've ridden this bike, haven't you? First and foremost. So that's a great start. So I'll come on to that in a minute. But let's get techie with the engine first of all. Brand new, which is great. First time in a long time, right, for Suzuki?
For a little while, but it's an absolute peach. Customers are going to absolutely love this bike once they come to test ride in dealership. So we've got a long stroke 776 parallel twin engine, and all importantly 270-degree crank.
Nice.
So allied to that,
so it gives it kind of V-twin vibes, doesn't it? It gives it a bit of character, right?
Yeah, all the good, but because of the balancer system on it, and it's something that initially I skipped over when I was reading through the interesting facts on the bike, but it's something that brings, no pun intended, great balance to the bike. So when you think of the good side of twins, it's the way it feels, sort of sat on the bike, nicely through the bars, the low rumble, kind of the grunt as you're picking it up on the power off the apex of a corner. And this bike has got all of the great stuff, and will put a massive smile on your face like it did with mine. But obviously with some engine configurations, too much vibe can then be bad and a negative riding experience, and the innovative new balancer system basically means that you retain all the great stuff, the sound, the great feeling, but none of that excessive vibiness that can get with other types of twins.
Tell us a bit more about capacity 776, we know that. Power, that's one of the big the big talking points, isn't it, with any new bike? Power and torque.
Yeah, so there's two things. I guess there's peak figures, and then there's the overall character in terms of what you'll experience with real people riding on real roads. So to offer a tangible step up from the sort of classical middle weights, the 600s, there is a decent jump up to 82.9 PS, but that's peak power. Equally peak torque, 78 Newton meters, but both are at relatively low RPMs with it being a parallel twin. But it's the journey there from low RPM. So even for me at night, unfamiliar roads, second, third, fourth gear, super low RPM. And as you're picking it up, you get the rumble, but you're getting the thrust, you're chasing your mate or you're leading the group. And it's a really rewarding ride all the way through the mid-range. It keeps pulling strong all the way up to the top. So it's not just a high revving buzzy engine, whether you're an experienced rider or somebody that's new. It's a really forgiving, flexible, but ultimately really rewarding and exciting ride because of the way the engine develops that torque, which is what you're going to use in the real world, not just the peak figures.
Speaking of those peak figures, whereabouts are they? Where are they?
So I think it's 6,750 RPM for peak torque and 8,500 for peak power.
Oh, nice. But then you, like you say, you're still talking about the operating window.
Yeah,
really
realistically,
flexible.
even low RPM, fourth gear coming out of roundabouts, the bike pulls so strongly. Really, really good.
6-speed quick shifter.
Indeed, yeah. So quick shifter is standard.
Oh,
so
nice.
as I experienced on some of our other models, it's great to have a beautiful engine, but a quick shifter just takes it to the next level. And it's not just from a performance perspective either. Obviously, quick shifter for on the way up, keeping the throttle pinned all the way up seamlessly, or having a nice firm grasp on the bars as you're coming down through the box with the auto blipper. It's great for this bike. But obviously this engine will be used in the 800DE as well, or even if you're going to cruise in higher gears or over longer distances on this bike, that ability to not constantly be on the clutch, and it's got quite a sort of practical touring aspect to it as well as the performance one.
And auto blip on the way down, of course.
Indeed.
Yeah, some manufacturers talk about rider fatigue, and I think that actually when you ride a bike and you ride aggressively enough to warrant the quick shifter, it just gives you that sort of internal buzz as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd say for me with quick shift, it's particularly the downshift, the fact that you can keep that left hand firmly planted on the bars, or strong, holding your core stronger, working more on your body position, and just able to concentrate, and just that little bit of mental energy that you're spending faffing around with the clutch and things like that, the fact you just haven't got to do it. You can enjoy the scenery, you can enjoy the bike, the noise of the engine, and that's what we're all out there to do, is have fun on our bikes. Less
Faff, more go. Speaking about rideability, I had a chance to sit on the bike a little bit earlier on. You really do, I know it's a commonly used phrase, but you sit in the bike as opposed to on the bike. You really do feel part of it. The sort of the seat height itself is low enough versus the top of the tank, top of the screen here as well. You must have found it, you're taller than I am.
Yeah, so I've only ridden this one, not the 800D yet, but something that was fundamental to the engineering and both the engine and the main frame that is shared between the two bikes, albeit with a different head angle, was that part of the reason it is a parallel twin, part of the reason for the new balancer design was to make the engine compact. It's still a full-size bike. It feels like a proper full-size machine, but because of the compactness of the engine, because we've used steel that's given a nice strong frame for agile handling, or the strength for accessory luggage with the 800DE, that allows you to get that sit-in feel, to get the great ergonomics, but also to get a relatively slim chassis, which aesthetically helps with the razor-sharp looks on this bike, but it also means for different types of riders and different statures, because not everyone's a bigger rider like you and I, it means it will work for them as well.
Tell me a little bit more about sort of the weight distribution, and how it's all sort of crammed in, because it appears to be so narrow.
Yeah, so ready to ride weight is, I think it's 204 kilos on this one. It's 230 on the 800DE. But as I say, absolute founding principles and fundamentals, things that's contributed to the size of the engine in terms of the right amount of power, but not then making it too big or too powerful that the engine was too heavy. And it's all contributed to that, and then how it knocks on to the chassis to be able to get it nice and compact, nice and slim, but having a full-size machine. Also with this one in particular, a slightly longer wheelbase that might be traditional for bikes in this class. But that then allied with the suspension selection, the suspension setup, the way that it's all been harmonised by the engineers, means you've got that inherent stability that you're mechanically getting from the wheelbase, from the tyre choice. But the nimbleness of the handling on this bike is really striking as well. The engine sound and feel and the handling struck me in less than a minute. I hadn't even left the gate and I was like, oh wow, can feel this is nice coming around some of the corners, leaving Suzuki towers, but then starting to drop it into bends, really, really nice agile handling for those tight and twisted as well.
Which of course must have been assisted by the suspension. So front and rear are?
Yep, so both aesthetically for the performance side of things, but then also what it contributes to the chassis dynamics. So we've got KYB upside down beefy forks at the front,
yep,
and then KYB preload adjustable shock at the rear as well.
So adjustable at the back, not at the front.
Correct.
Fine. And what about brakes and tyres?
So brakes, again, part aesthetic, helping with the performance credentials, are radially mounted calipers on the front, delivering lots of power. So Nissan calipers up front.
Yeah, twin discs, yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah, 310 discs. And tyres, they are, as with our other bigger GSX-S 1000 and GT family, it began life as an off-the-shelf Dunlop product, so Road Sport 2s, but then custom altered basically in terms of the belt, the carcass and the final compound specific to the demands and the weight and weight distribution of this bike.
Can I ask a little bit about the name of the bike? So GSX-8S
Yep.
is not a similar one as the GSX-S 1000 or 125.
Yep.
Is that specifically down to the fact that it's a brand new engine, a brand new chassis, a brand new bike, that it doesn't quite fit in with that?
It's that combination. So although I'm product focused, I sit within a marketing team. So when we make fantastic new products like this and the 800DE, there's always elements of things that Suzuki are renowned for that you want to pull through, or families of bikes like the GSX-S that are really successful that you want to hold on to. But when you've got something that's modern, that's new, you want colours and names that are going to help reflect that and make it easy for people to see, something's changed there. So it is seen as part of the GSX-S 125, 900, 1000 family, but exactly as you say, because it's a new chassis, it's a new engine, and it's a new, even sharper look, it helps reflect that.
Gotcha. You mentioned colours. This is sharp. I really like the fact that it's BikeSocial. I mean, electric Suzuki Blue. What else? I've seen a white one lurking around here as well.
Yeah, so obviously colour is going to be highly subjective, so we've tried to give people a wide offering. So we've got the new Cosmic Blue that adorns not only the body panels, but the gorgeous new wheels, the beautiful subframe as well.
Yeah.
But we've
really
also,
neat, doesn't it, matching that on the wheels as well. It's very, very
yeah,
smart.
intentional by the designers to highlight some of the key, really beautifully stylised parts like the fabricated subframe and the new wheel design. So those blue accents actually do translate onto the white bike, where you've still got the matte black tank, but then you've got the white body panels, and then the ever popular quintessential black bike, where you'll have black panels, black subframe and black wheels as well. So a real breadth of choice depending on people's preference.
Yeah, gotcha. Tell me a little bit more about sort of economy, MPG, fuel tank size.
Yeah, as I say, the bike will have wide appeal. We've got sort of core audiences that Paul's talked about in terms of where we're looking to pull from in the market. But part of being a naked is a degree of flexibility that isn't present with certain other bits of the market. So you've got a 14 litre tank, which is pretty commonplace in terms of some of the bikes that we're in and around. In this incarnation, it's circa, I think, 67 mpg. So it's got
Just good for a
sort
couple
of
hundred miles then.
class equaling range, in terms of range.
Good stuff. And in terms of its rideability, electronics, I'm looking at the handlebars here, and they're really neat. There's no wires all over the place, but they're really compact. Mode button, up and down switches, and presumably you've got traction control and rider modes, right?
Yep, so in terms of what's there for the rider, the most obvious bits are, we've touched on the quick shifter, which is standard equipment as well. Both the trip information and the settings that you're going to view are on a beautiful new 5-inch colour TFT screen, which is common to both this bike and the 800DE. On the 8S, we've got 3 power modes, A, B and C, so depending on how you like to ride a bike, what the conditions are like, just gives you that ability to choose. You've got traction control as well, so again, 3 modes there. So again, depending on your preference and the conditions, and with traction, the ability to disengage the system. So if you are in an off-road scenario, like you happen to take the bike on the track, or just personal preferences, there is the ability to disengage, and our bikes do remember ignition off what you've selected as well, so you don't constantly, every coffee, every fuel stop, have to keep reinforcing the same selections. Some of the stuff's a little bit less obvious as well is that things like anti-wheelie are built into our traction control settings, so you haven't got 15 different settings and a manual required. And you touched on the switch cubes as well. They're neat, they're packaged really nicely, and they're really intuitive. You're not having to glance down lots and lots of different buttons while you're on the go. We ride motorcycles to enjoy them, to enjoy the environments they're in, and riding with our friends. So yeah, neat switchgear, really easy to operate, and sort of carefully thought out electronics that are only going to add to the combination of the engine and the chassis that have already been incredibly well designed and combined.
Fly-by-wire throttle, isn't it? So
Yep, ride-by-wire throttle as well.
just going back to those rider modes then, in terms of power, ABC, and then traction. Well, on the power side, does it restrict power at a certain place? How does it
No,
work?
so in terms of power modes, all three modes, A, B and C, will all achieve maximum power, but it's just in terms of how aggressive the ramp is based on your throttle input. So if you imagine curves on a graph where A is for the smallest amount of input, you've got the most aggressive reaction, and then you've got a midpoint and then an even softer point, either for a more relaxed ride or riding in wetter conditions where you don't want to get as much power for such a small throttle input. And then it's a similar story with the traction control as well, in terms of the detected and predicted spin and when that's going to cut in to help support your riding.
Gotcha. We talked about, or you talked about, or mentioned briefly earlier on about accessories.
Indeed.
What are your top accessories on the bike?
I think core things, people are always going to want to stylize the bike, so there's some tank pads, some protection foils, some wheel rim tapes as well to help those new wheels pop even more. On the practicality side, if some people, as well as using the bike for fun, are going to use it to commute on, you've got a couple of tank bag options. There's some semi-rigid panniers as well, which have got a really nice design, actually, how easily they can go on, come off, and then you're left with tiny little brackets as well. So if you needed to use them for getting the laptop in for work during the week, or indeed if you were taking a pill in and a bit of kit somewhere, it's then really easy to just pop it off and go and enjoy the twisties on your own and make the bike look as beautiful as the designers intended.
Fantastic. Now, we've talked about, you've ridden it. Have you anything more to sort of tell us about why we should all go down to the dealerships in the spring and have a go on one?
It's just a brilliant combination of factors, that everything that makes motorcycling good. It looks stunning even when it's parked up at a bar or a cafe. The sound from the engine, even at startup and then especially under load, will just have you giggling inside your lid. Like I said, that handling is a real nice combination between confidence and spine stability for those that are maybe not as experienced riders, but then for those that are can just fully leverage how nimble the handling is. And sort of trademark with Suzuki, I know we haven't got confirmed pricing yet, which is why we can't share it, but I think you can confidently expect that, as with all Suzukis, you will get a hell of a lot for your money wherever we end up on price point. And just, yeah, the combination of that great chassis, the amazing new engine, the extra bits of tech that have been leveraged on top with the quick shifter and the screen, and then just the way that it all comes together. I can't wait to spend more time on one of these, and then some of those fundamentals that are also in the 800D as well, and just really looking forward to seeing these in the hands of customers and the massive grins on their face from their new Suzuki as well.
Steve, you really have inhaled that press release and done a good job. So 10 out of 10. Thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you.
Good job. Well, thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got a lot from it. I hope you now know as much as Steve knows. Available in the spring. Price is coming soon. Any queries, questions, comments, concerns, put them in the thingy below and we'll do our best to get back to you. But yeah, thanks again for now and see you next time.